Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm 23 now, freshly graduated and exhausted. Not just from school, but from years of pretending I didn't notice how little I mattered to my own family. From the outside, we looked like the typical happy suburban household. Dad was an accountant with a firm handshake and a fondness for golf metaphors. Mom taught English at a private high school and loved quoting Jane Austen out of context. And then there were us, Lila and me. Two sisters, just 3 years apart. You'd think we were equals. We weren't. Lila was born blonde and dimpled and perfect. Even as a baby, people used to stop my mom on the street to coo over her. By the time we were in elementary school, it was already obvious who the favorite was. Lila got new clothes every season, piano lessons, gymnastics, French classes. I wore her hand-me-downs and got scolded for tearing the knees while playing in the backyard. At birthdays, she'd get shiny, themed parties, unicorns one year, mermaids the next, always with custom cakes and gift bags. My 7th birthday? A joint celebration with our cousin Daniel to save time and money, even though he was 2 years younger and obsessed with tractors. I got a puzzle. Lila got a karaoke machine and a Barbie dream house. Every Christmas, the tree was practically groaning under the weight of Lila's presents. I'd sit beside her in the living room, peeling back the wrapping paper on practical gifts. Socks, math workbooks, a posture corrector one year. When I was 10, I circled a drawing tablet in a catalog and left it on the kitchen table, open to the page, for weeks. On Christmas morning, it wasn't under the tree. Lila, meanwhile, unwrapped a pink digital camera to capture her creative side. My parents always had excuses. Lila's older now, she needs different things. Or, you're more independent, Amelia. What they really meant was, she's worth the investment. You're just background. I wasn't even allowed to be good at anything first. If I joined a club, Lila joined it next semester and instantly became the face of it. When I painted a landscape that won first place at the district art fair, my mom barely looked up from her grading. "Nice, sweetie," she muttered, then turned to Lila. "Did you find your tap shoes for rehearsal?" But the worst part wasn't their apathy. It was how they made me feel guilty for wanting more. "You're being dramatic," Mom would say, when I cried quietly in my room. "We love you both the same. Dad once told me, you just don't have Lila's discipline. Maybe if you were more consistent." I got straight A's. I worked part-time at the library. I organized a book drive for our school. But none of it counted. Not in a way that mattered to them. Only one person ever truly saw me. Grandma Eliza. My mom's mother, sharp-tongued and silver-haired, with a house full of books and an attic full of old canvases. She'd been an art teacher before retiring, and when I was 6 and drew a crayon dragon on her kitchen wall, she didn't scold me. She took a photo and framed it. Every Saturday, she'd pick me up and take me to the library or the art supply store. She bought me sketch pads, colored pencils, charcoal sets. When I got older, she introduced me to digital art and graphic design. She was the one who first said the words that saved me again and again. "You have a gift, Amelia. Don't let anyone make you feel invisible." She noticed things, like how I curled into myself whenever my mom gushed about Lila's recitals, or how I clutched my sketchbook like it was life support. "You don't need to outshine her," she'd whisper. "You just need to be you, and you, my dear, are spectacular." But she wasn't around all the time. She lived an hour away and only came by every few weekends. And when she wasn't there, it was just me, Lila, and the heavy silence of being unwanted. Lila wasn't just the favorite. She made sure I knew it. She could be cruel in that effortless way some girls are. When I got braces, she called me train tracks at school. When I got my period and bled through my skirt in 8th grade, she told everyone in her friend group. It was just a joke. She'd shrug when I confronted her, and our parents would nod. "You two need to stop fighting. Sisters are supposed to be best friends." We were never friends. By high school, I'd stopped hoping for praise. I threw myself into my art and schoolwork, clinging to the idea that, if I worked hard enough, someone, anyone, would see me. I didn't go to parties. I didn't date. I spent weekends building my portfolio and watching YouTube tutorials on graphic design. When I got into college, I was stunned. My portfolio had won me a partial scholarship, and my GPA covered the rest with federal aid and loans. Lila, of course, announced her acceptance to the same school 2 weeks later. "Don't worry," my parents told her at dinner. "We've got you covered." I blinked. "Wait, what?" Mom looked at me, almost confused. "Well, Lila deserves it. She's always been so focused." I was shaking. "But I got in too. I worked just as hard. Why can't you help me even a little?" Dad sighed, like I was exhausting him. "We expected you to manage it on your own. You're used to being resourceful." Resourceful. That was their code word for not worth investing in. I nodded that night and excused myself from the table. I cried in my room, again. I thought about calling Grandma, but I didn't want her to hear me like that. I wanted to wait until I had something to show her. Something big. Something that would finally prove they were wrong about me. I didn't know what it would be yet, but I swore I would find it. And on graduation day, they'd see. Oh, they'd finally see. Harrington University was a name that made people widen their eyes. It sounded like destiny, like marble floors and whispered legacies and dreams that actually had a chance. I didn't expect to get in. Not because I wasn't qualified, I was. My portfolio was strong, my GPA solid. I'd volunteered, competed, created. But because people like me, daughters who were raised in the shadow of someone shinier, weren't supposed to land spots at schools like that. So when the email came, I didn't open it for 2 hours. I just sat on my bed, laptop glowing in front of me, heart hammering in my chest, like it knew I wasn't supposed to hope. I finally clicked it. And when I read the word congratulations, I actually screamed. A real full-throated, disbelieving scream. Lila appeared in my doorway almost instantly. "You okay?" I spun in my chair, tears already starting to well up. "I got in, Lila, I got in." She smiled a little too slowly. "Oh, yeah, me too." That was it. No hug, no, "I'm proud of you." Just that trademark Lila indifference, like my joy was an inconvenience. I found out later she'd known for days. She just hadn't mentioned it. I didn't let that dim it. Not then. For once, we were going to the same place. I wasn't the leftover sister stuck at community college or some underfunded art school. We were equals, finally. It took exactly one dinner to burn that fantasy to the ground. It was a Sunday. The 4 of us around the table. Lila's acceptance letter was printed and framed on the mantel, naturally. Mine was still folded in the back pocket of my jeans. Mom had cooked one of her big, celebratory meals: roast chicken, baby potatoes, lemon cake from the bakery downtown. It smelled like something sacred. Dad poured wine. Everyone was smiling. Until they weren't. "We're proud of you both," Mom began, folding her napkin delicately. "This is such a huge milestone." Lila beamed. Dad leaned forward, elbows on the table. "That said, we've decided that we're going to support Lila's tuition and housing fully." I blinked. "And me?" I asked, too quiet. Mom didn't even flinch. "Well, honey, we know how creative and independent you are. You'll figure it out." "Wait, you're not paying for me? At all?" Dad gave me the same look he used when I'd brought home a B in 9th grade algebra. Like I was being difficult. Like I was disappointing him again. "We only have so many resources," he said. "We have to invest them wisely." I stared at my plate. "She's always been so consistent," Mom continued, gesturing toward Lila. "She's focused, driven." "I got in too," I said, louder now. "I worked hard. I've been building a portfolio since I was 15. Mom gave me a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Sweetheart, you've dabbled. There's a difference." "And Lila?" Lila just sat there. She didn't speak up, didn't say, "That's not fair," didn't offer to split it. She just took another bite of her lemon cake and avoided my eyes. I left the table, went straight out the back door, and sat on the cold porch steps until the sky went dark. They came out an hour later, asked if I wanted to watch a movie with them. I said no. That night, I sat in my room and stared at my ceiling and imagined all the ways my life could break. I didn't have college savings. I didn't have a financial cushion. I didn't even have a credit card in my name. But I had Grandma Eliza. She was the only person I could call without shame. When I told her what had happened, I expected her to gasp, to cry, to rage on my behalf. But she didn't. She just sighed. I knew they'd do this. I swallowed hard. Why? Because Lila is easier. She's their version of success. You're a little dangerous to people like them. I laughed through my tears. That doesn't help. No, she agreed. But this will. You're not them. You never have been. And that's your greatest strength. I need money, I whispered. I hate to ask, but I can't, sweetheart, she said gently. I wish I could. But you know my pension barely covers my bills. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I hated myself for asking. I hated that they made me beg when all I wanted was a fair chance. But I can give you something more important, she said. Faith. It sounded so corny, I almost rolled my eyes. Until she said this. You have a spark that no amount of money can buy. You've taught yourself more than most people ever will. You have vision. That's why they're afraid to invest in you. Because you'll prove them wrong. And they won't be able to take any credit for it. Those words, they won't be able to take any credit for it, they broke something open inside me. So I got to work. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m, applying for every scholarship I could find. I cleaned up my digital portfolio, contacted old teachers for letters of recommendation, signed up for work study, drafted loan applications. I calculated exactly how many shifts I'd need to pull each week to cover food and rent if nothing came through. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. But it was mine. Lila had comfort. I had grit. And grit, when you let it grow wild enough, becomes something sharper. It becomes steel. And steel does not bend. There was no dramatic goodbye when I left for college. No packed car full of boxes. No family photos taken on the front porch. No parents waving from the driveway with tearful eyes. My dad handed me a manila envelope with my birth certificate and insurance card and said, "You'll need these." My mom gave me a stiff hug and reminded me not to fall behind in your classes. Lila was too busy packing her new monogram duffel bags for move-in day to notice I was leaving a week early to start work-study training. I took a Greyhound with a backpack, one roller suitcase that squeaked, and a duffel bag that used to be Lila's before she got a nicer one for Christmas. That was it. That was my start. The Craigslist ad I'd answered promised a shared creative living space. In reality, it was a crumbling 2-story house that smelled like wet carpet and desperation. My room was a narrow corner of the living room, closed off by a second-hand curtain someone had nailed to the ceiling. The floor creaked when I rolled over in bed. The couch was missing a leg. The Wi-Fi barely worked. But it was $300 a month with no security deposit, and it was 3 bus stops from campus. That made it a palace. My roommates were strangers. Jess, a photography major, who slept all day and sang at bars all night. Mateo, who was studying film and smoked so much weed, I started getting second-hand contact highs. And Jules, a barista with a pet rabbit and a voice like gravel. We weren't friends, but we coexisted. There was a quiet understanding among the broke. No judgment, no questions, no drama. I unpacked my bags in silence, hung my clothes on a metal rack I bought at a thrift store for $5, and sat down on my mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling. This was it. My life now. The first week of classes was a blur. Harrington University didn't look like it belonged to someone like me. Its buildings were covered in ivy, its walkways lined with students who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog. Everyone seemed to be gliding. Designer shoes, perfect teeth, laughter that echoed like entitlement. I didn't glide. I shuffled, exhausted, from class to shift to another class, fueled by caffeine and spite. My first part-time job was at the campus print lab. It paid $8.50 an hour, but it came with access to the school's professional-grade drawing tablets and printers. That was my secret motive. I spent breaks printing my sketches and refining my portfolio. I became friends with the tech who worked nights. He showed me how to tweak scanner settings, how to get colors perfect for gallery submissions. My second job was cleaning offices downtown. I'd take the 6:45 p.m. bus, change into a janitor's polo in the restroom of a law firm, and mop fluorescent-lit hallways until midnight. My feet throbbed, my hands smelled like bleach, and I'd sometimes fall asleep on the bus ride back, waking up just in time to get off at the right stop. I averaged 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night, 5 on weekends if I was lucky. Eating became a negotiation. Do I buy a loaf of bread and stretch it across 4 days? Or splurge on peanut butter and risk not affording tampons next week? I learned to make lentils 5 different ways. My roommate's rabbit ate better than I did. But I didn't complain. There was no one to complain to. Instead, I made a spreadsheet of scholarships. I applied for everyone: arts contests, diversity grants, women in media, first-generation scholarships. Some required essays, some wanted designs. I gave them everything: my truth, my sketches, my hours. When I wasn't working or applying for aid, I was in class. Front row, always. I didn't speak much. My voice sounded like sandpaper from sleep deprivation. But I listened, took notes, drew diagrams, asked questions when I could keep my eyes open. Once, a professor asked if I wanted to present my concept art for the semester project. I nodded too quickly, blacked out mid-sentence from lack of sleep, and barely made it to the hallway before vomiting into a trash can. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't afford to be weak. Lila texted me once that semester. A photo of her new dorm decor, pink and gold, with fairy lights and matching pillows. "College life," she wrote. I stared at it while sitting on the floor of the print lab, eating saltine crackers for dinner. I didn't reply. She lived in a private room, had a mini fridge, took electives that involved wine tasting and philosophy of fashion. She changed majors 3 times. Our parents covered it all. She never asked how I was doing. They didn't either. But Grandma Eliza emailed me every Sunday night. Just a short message. Sometimes a quote, sometimes a link to an artist she loved. Always signed with, "They don't see you yet." But I do. Those emails were lifelines. They reminded me that someone believed in me, even if no one else did. So I kept pushing. There were days I sobbed in the library bathroom from sheer exhaustion. Nights I curled up under my coat because the heating in the house broke again. Mornings I showed up to class with shadows under my eyes so dark they looked bruised. But I didn't quit. I couldn't quit. Because every scraped knee, every ignored message, every meal I skipped, they were all going into something bigger, something mine. I wasn't just surviving college, I was forging something out of fire. And I swore to myself, someday they'd see it. Someday I'd make them choke on their indifference. Recognition doesn't come with a parade. It arrives quietly, like a sunrise you didn't know to expect. At first, nothing felt different. My body was still running on 5 hours of sleep and cheap instant ramen. My fingers were still stained with ink and graphite. My work shoes had holes in both soles, and I'd learned to stuff paper towels inside them to keep my socks dry. But something had shifted. Slowly. Steadily. People started looking at me differently. It began with Professor Lin. She taught visual storytelling, a class full of students who had expensive tablets and software suites their parents bought them before orientation. I had an old Lenovo, a secondhand stylus, and open-source software I'd downloaded from a sketchy link. We were 2 weeks into the semester when she pulled me aside after class. I thought I was in trouble. I hadn't printed an assignment because I couldn't afford more ink. "Amelia," she said, her voice calm but purposeful, "can I ask, did you write that character profile? The girl with the constellation tattoos?" I nodded, heart pounding. "Yes, ma'am." She tapped her pen on her clipboard. "You wrote her like she was alive. And your panel layouts, they carry weight, real emotional rhythm. That's not something you teach." I just stared. She leaned in. "You see people. That's your strength. It's rare. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever told me I was rare. I wasn't the girl who got singled out for praise. I was the girl who got told to do better or try harder while watching Lila get applause for breathing. Professor Lin didn't just notice my work. She started mentoring me. She pushed my name to the department heads, invited me to enter exhibitions, connected me to scholarships I didn't even know existed. Then there was Professor Green. He taught advanced composition for media, and he didn't smile much. The kind of professor who handed back essays with so many red marks, you wondered if he'd stabbed the page in anger. So when he called my name in the middle of lecture, my stomach dropped. "This," he said, holding up my project, "is what storytelling looks like when it comes from a place of earned pain." He handed it back gently. "Whatever you're doing, don't stop." Those moments, small, fleeting, quiet, felt like stitches. Like something inside me was slowly being sewn back together. I was still broke, still hungry half the time, still scrubbing bathroom floors after midnight and falling asleep in lecture halls when no one was looking. But I wasn't invisible anymore. And then came Chloe. It started with a housing shuffle. My building was doing renovations, and everyone had to move temporarily. I didn't have any say in the assignment, just a time, an address, and a key. The new place was slightly better. It had 4 walls, a door that locked, and a kitchen that didn't smell like mold. And a roommate. Her name was Chloe. She opened the door in a face mask and bunny slippers, holding a bowl of noodles with chopsticks sticking out. "You're Amelia?" she asked. "Great. I made too much. Hope you eat carbs?" It took me half a second to nod. She handed me the bowl before I even put my bag down. That's how it started. Chloe was everything I wasn't used to. Direct, nurturing, slightly chaotic in the best way. She was a chemistry major with color-coded notes, an obsession with spreadsheets, and a surprisingly soulful playlist she only listened to during all-nighters. She noticed things, like how I always ate after 9 p.m., but never had more than a banana. How I flinched when someone offered help. How I never asked for anything, even when I was clearly on the edge of burnout. "You work too much," she said one night while stirring lentils. "I have to." "You eat too little." "I'm used to it." "That's not okay." I shrugged. "I don't really have a choice." She didn't argue. She just started doing things. Little things at first. Leaving food on the stove labeled "for you." Slipping protein bars into my backpack. Rewriting her grocery lists to include my preferences without asking. She called it logistical compassion. I called it magic. Chloe wasn't just kind. She was grounding. She proofread my essays when my eyes gave out. Quizzed me on art history terms before midterms. Taught me how to use Excel better. Let me cry once, just once, when a gallery turned down my submission with a 1-line rejection. Then she said, "Screw them. Let's rework it and make them wish they'd said yes." We stayed up until 3 a.m., editing the piece together over tea and ABBA songs. I submitted it to a different show the next week. It won 2nd place. There were nights when I came home so tired I could barely unlock the door, and Chloe would already have food on the table. Not a feast, just soup or grilled cheese, but the kind of meal that made you feel safe. It was the first time in my life I experienced comfort without conditions, not earned by good grades, not offered in exchange for silence, not doled out based on favoritism, just given. Because someone thought I mattered. That apartment with Chloe became the first place I ever felt like I could exhale. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy. We used crates for bookshelves and hung posters with thumbtacks, but it had warmth, laughter, the smell of cinnamon toast at 2 a.m., and the sound of someone humming while studying. It had someone who looked me in the eye and said, "You're not a burden, you're my friend." And that was more valuable than anything I could have ever gotten from home. I still worked 2 jobs, still skipped meals sometimes, still worried about tuition every single day. But I wasn't alone. I was seen. I was held. I was, for the first time, home. When the scholarship disappeared, I didn't panic at first. I stared at the email for a full 5 minutes, blinking at the words. Due to restructuring, we regret to inform you. Then I read it again, and again, and then I closed my laptop and just sat on the floor, shaking. I had $72 in my checking account. Rent was due in 6 days. I'd just bought a second-hand drawing pad from a senior who was transferring out. My grocery money was already budgeted down to the dollar. There was no room for error. No plan B. I remember whispering out loud, "Okay, so that's it." But I didn't mean it, because I knew what I had to do. I emailed every professor I'd ever spoken to. I combed the campus job board. I called Chloe and told her I might have to move back to the couch in my old place if I couldn't find something fast. She came home that night with bags of groceries and said, "We'll figure it out. But eat first." It was Professor Lin who saved me. Again. She called me to her office and didn't waste time. "You need money," she said. "We need help. You've proven yourself in my classes. You're sharp, organized, and you understand how to communicate visual language better than half the grad students I know." She handed me a folder. "Teaching assistant, summer session, 8 weeks. You'll help me run critiques, grade assignments, keep track of projects. Pays hourly. It's yours if you want it." I wanted to cry, but I just nodded. "Yes. Thank you. God, thank you." I walked out of that office with something I hadn't felt in months: momentum. And it changed everything. The position didn't pay much, but it did more than keep me afloat. It changed how I was seen. Suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who looked tired in the front row. I was Amelia Dawson, TA, to one of the most respected professors in the department. I had keys to the media lab. I had access, trust, a title, and something else began to stir in me. Something that had nothing to do with art assignments or lectures. It started one night when I got a message from an old client, someone I'd designed a logo for freshman year. She needed help launching her new online boutique, Instagram strategy, email templates, brand visuals. "I trust you," she said. "Whatever you charge, it's worth it." The words echoed in my head for days. I'd been doing freelance work in the margins of my life since I got to Harrington. Between jobs, between classes, between breakdowns, posters, banners, book covers, social content. I never thought of it as a business, just a hustle, but maybe it could be more. I opened a blank Google Doc and typed a name: Inklight Studio, brand and storytelling for modern creators. Then I closed the tab. It felt ridiculous. I opened it again the next night. I built a one-page site using a free template and a few samples I was proud of. Set up a new email. Bought a $19.99 domain with the last of my leftover bookstore credit card. Then I made a plan. 5 hours a week. That's what I could commit. 5 hours between TA shifts, lectures, and scrubbing toilets downtown. 5 hours for myself. I sent cold emails. I designed PDF packages with names like Starter Kit and Glow Up branding. I posted flyers at coffee shops and wrote in campus forms. My first month, I had 1 client, then 2, then 4. By the middle of the semester, I was working with 6 small business owners regularly: artists, indie authors, online therapists, candle makers. People who didn't want just a pretty logo. They wanted identity, story, soul. And I gave it to them. At night, I'd light a candle in our shared kitchen, open my beat-up laptop, and sit in my corner with noise-canceling headphones. Chloe would do homework on the couch, occasionally sliding a plate of toast or fruit beside me. Sometimes I'd look up and see her asleep with her textbook open on her chest, our little world humming quietly under the glow of a single lamp. I didn't sleep much, but for once, the fatigue didn't feel like drowning. It felt like building. Each invoice I sent meant more freedom. Each client review meant more validation. Each small win, a repost, a testimonial, a referral, was another brick in the foundation of something that was finally mine. When the semester ended, I looked at my account balance and didn't flinch. For the first time, I wasn't worried about whether I could afford books or rent or tampons. I was okay. No, I was more than okay. I was thriving. Word started spreading on campus. Other students asked me for portfolio help. A few professors asked how I balanced it all. One even hired me to update his research website. And I started saying something I never thought I'd get to say. I run my own studio. Chloe grinned every time she heard it. Damn right you do, she'd say, clinking her mug against mine. I wasn't the poor girl in the back anymore. I wasn't the forgotten sister, the afterthought. I was a business owner. I was a leader. And for the first time in my life, I was the one choosing the story. Finals week had a strange electricity in the air. It buzzed through campus like a storm waiting to break. Deadlines loomed. Screens glowed through windows long past midnight. Coffee cups multiplied on every surface. Even the air felt tighter, like the whole world was holding its breath. I was walking back from the design lab, arms full of mock-ups for a client presentation, brain fried from 12 hours of nonstop work, when I saw her, Lila, standing beneath the flickering streetlight in front of the library. Her posture was rigid, her makeup smudged. Her eyes were red. Her hands were trembling, clutching a cracked USB drive and a binder that looked like it had been dragged through a war zone. I should have kept walking. My heart said turn away. My memory whispered, she never helped you. But something in her expression stopped me. I'd seen Lila angry, smug, bored, triumphant. I'd never seen her afraid. She looked up and met my eyes. And for the first time since we were kids, there was no performance in her face. Amelia, she said, breathless, please, I don't know who else to go to. I didn't speak. I just walked closer. She clutched the USB like it could disappear. My thesis, it's gone. The whole thing, months of work. I opened the file tonight and it said corrupted. I tried everything. I even went to IT. They told me there's nothing they can do. My professor won't give an extension. If I don't turn it in by Friday, her voice cracked, I won't graduate. The weight of that sentence hung between us. The girl who had been handed everything was now teetering on the edge. I thought you had it on the cloud, I said carefully. I did. I thought I did. But I guess it stopped sinking 2 months ago. I didn't notice. I was so focused on the writing that Her voice broke off again. I've been stupid. I paused, watched her crumble. Come with me, I said. She followed. My apartment was dim and quiet. Chloe was at her girlfriend's for the night. The place smelled like old tea and books and printer ink. Lila stepped inside like she was entering another world. She took in the stack of textbooks, the second-hand desk, the scratch paper with sketches, my dry erase board full of deadlines and invoices, my old laptop humming softly beneath the glow of a desk lamp. You built all this? She whispered. I ignored the question. Sit, we're going to reconstruct it, start to finish. She dropped into the chair like her knees couldn't hold her anymore. Her voice was hoarse. Why are you helping me? I turned on my laptop. Because you asked. We worked in silence at first. I opened a fresh Word doc, set up her formatting, and said, Start from memory. Walk me through each section. What was your thesis statement? She hesitated. It was about performance studies and emotional authenticity in modern theater. How people confuse vulnerability with performative sadness. I paused. You'd know a lot about that. She didn't argue. As she spoke, I typed. Slowly the skeleton emerged. Arguments, references, quotes. Her research was good, her ideas sharp, but her voice shook and she kept stopping mid-sentence, like she expected me to snap. I didn't. I just kept asking, what next? By 1 a.m., we had 5 pages. By 2:30, we had 10. At 3:15, she leaned back and whispered, I can't believe we're doing this. I can, I said. We took a break. I heated soup while she sat on the couch, knees drawn to her chest. I didn't think you'd help me, she said softly. After everything. I sat beside her. I didn't think you'd ever ask. She looked around the room again. I didn't know this was your life. I thought, I don't know, you were just being dramatic, angry. I was angry, I admitted. I still am sometimes. But mostly I'm tired. She looked down at her hands. I used to think we were just different. That you liked being the outsider. That you chose the hard path. I stared at her. And now? I asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Now I see you didn't choose it. It was chosen for you. She swallowed. I got birthday parties and dance lessons and tutors. You got socks and silence. I got tuition. You got bills. I didn't speak. I wanted her to keep going. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know why I didn't fight it more. Maybe I liked being the favorite. Maybe I thought if I acknowledged it, I'd have to give something up. Her voice cracked. But I did give something up. I gave up you. That hit harder than I expected. I thought you hated me, I said. She shook her head, crying now. I hated that you didn't need them. I hated that you were stronger than me. I turned to her, stunned. You were doing all this, she said, gesturing at my notes, my equipment, the studio brand logo printed on a sticky note, with nothing, and I couldn't even back up my own file. I've never had to fight for anything, until tonight. She wiped her eyes. And the first person I thought to call was you. That silence between us? That was 17 years of pain stretching its legs and finally exhaling. I'm sorry, Amelia, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. And I'm sorry too, for shutting you out. She nodded. We were just surviving, weren't we? Yeah, I said. But maybe now we don't have to anymore. At sunrise, we submitted her thesis. She cried again, this time from relief. When she left, she hugged me. Not the performative kind. The kind that clung, that said, I see you now. Before she stepped outside, she turned back. I want to know you, she said. For real, not the version Mom and Dad made you into. The real you. Okay, I said. But it goes both ways. She nodded. Deal. And just like that, we weren't enemies anymore. We were sisters, finally. I wasn't supposed to check my email during work hours, not while I was managing the print lab, surrounded by the rhythmic hum of machines and the scent of fresh toner. But that day, I did. And the subject line changed everything. Congratulations, National Youth Entrepreneurship Award recipient. I froze. I clicked the email, read the words, then reread them, my breath catching on every syllable. We are honored to inform you that your startup, Inklight Studio, has been selected as the national winner of this year's Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge. Your work represents the future of digital strategy and creative innovation. We look forward to celebrating your achievement at the National Summit next month. I stared at the screen, heart thudding, mouth dry. For a second, all I could hear was the soft whirring of the printer behind me. Then I laughed. Just once. A small, stunned laugh that escaped my chest before I could catch it. I had won. Me, Amelia Dawson. The girl who once rationed instant noodles by the week. The girl who taught herself graphic branding between midnight shifts and cleaned office floors to afford Wi-Fi. I had gone up against students backed by legacy networks, consultants, and trust funds. And I had beaten them. News spread quickly. By the next morning, the university's digital board flashed my face between ads for graduation gowns and mental health workshops. Senior wins National Business Award, it read. My photo, taken on my cracked phone in the lab, mid-coffee sip, was now their banner. My professors beamed. My inbox exploded. Classmates who never spoke to me before stopped me on the quad. Suddenly, I wasn't just that girl with the stylus and the late-night coffee breath. I was the university's star. And then, the second email came. Subject, University Commencement Ceremony. Speaking invitation. They wanted me to be the student commencement speaker, the voice of the graduating class. I stared at the message, mouth slightly open. Was this a mistake? It wasn't. I was being invited not just to receive an award, but to tell my story. The girl who once sat through lectures with a half-eaten granola bar in her pocket because she couldn't afford lunch. She would take the stage. She would be the one to speak to 5,000 people, parents, professors, the entire graduating class. I said yes before I could lose my nerve. The next weeks blurred. Photo shoots, article requests, sound bites for the alumni newsletter. The dean himself called to congratulate me. They asked me to write about my startup, my journey, my philosophy of resilience. I gave them the glossy version, the one that sounded inspiring, digestible, but inside, I remembered every minute they didn't see, every skipped meal, every 3 a.m. panic attack, every time I sat in the back of a classroom and wondered if anyone would ever know how hard I had fought to be there. Chloe grinned when she read the final draft of my speech. "It's good," she said. "It's you. It's not just pretty words. It's your blood." She curled my hair the night before the ceremony, even though we were both exhausted from finals. "I still remember when you said you'd never make it to graduation," she said softly, "and now you're giving the speech." I blinked fast. "Don't make me cry. I haven't memorized the ending yet." She squeezed my shoulder. "Cry on stage. That'll get you a standing ovation." Then, the night before the ceremony, I got a call from Professor Lin. "There's something you should know," she said, her voice carrying that gentle tone she used when delivering news with sharp edges. "What is it?" "There's a surprise for you at the ceremony," she said. "Not just the speech. The university has something planned, a public acknowledgement." My stomach twisted. "What kind of acknowledgement?" She chuckled. "You'll find out. Just be prepared. You've earned it." I hung up and tried to sleep, but my brain wouldn't slow down. What could it be? A special award? An honorary mention? A grant? I lay awake picturing possibilities until my phone buzzed again, this time a message from Lila. "Lila, just a heads up. Mom and Dad are coming tomorrow." I sat up. Me. "What? Why?" "Lila, they saw the news. I think it finally sank in that you're not just managing, Lila. They want to see it for themselves." I didn't respond right away. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, my silhouette warped by the glass. A year ago, the thought of them showing up would have wrecked me. But now, it just felt distant. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. The girl they overlooked no longer needed their applause. Still, I tucked the message into my pocket like a talisman. Tomorrow, I would take the stage. My name would echo through that auditorium, printed in programs, spoken into microphones. And they would hear it. Every single syllable. They would sit in the audience and see the daughter they tried to forget, standing on the stage they never built. But I did. With scraped knees, sleepless nights, and pure fire. And the surprise the university promised? It would be bigger than any of us could imagine. The sun was merciless that morning. It shimmered on every satin sash and polished loafer, baking the sea of black caps in heat and anticipation. I stood backstage, fingers clenched tightly around the folded paper of my speech, heart hammering so hard it echoed in my ears. The ceremony had barely begun, and I was already shaking, not with fear, but with something sharper, something like readiness. After years of invisibility, the light was finally coming for me. I peeked out from behind the curtain. The crowd was massive. Families packed the bleachers. Professors in bright academic robes filed into the rows closest to the stage. Cameras lined the front row. The university orchestra tuned softly beneath the drone of conversations. And then, there, 2 rows from the front, my parents. I recognized my father's stiff jaw, the way he always tilted his head when he felt out of place. My mother sat beside him, arms crossed, sunglasses still perched high like armor. And Lila, she saw me peeking, gave me the tiniest nod. They had come, but they had no idea what they were about to witness. The ceremony opened with the national anthem, then a string of recognitions, faculty awards, donor acknowledgements. The audience clapped politely, shifting under the weight of the heat and ceremony. Then the university president stepped up to the podium. She was tall, composed, and spoke with a clarity that cut straight through the noise. "This year," she said, "we faced one of the most competitive graduating classes in our university's history." Murmurs rippled, and among them stood a student who exemplified not just academic excellence, but extraordinary resilience, leadership, and vision. I felt my breath catch. My stomach turned. She is an entrepreneur, a scholar, and a mentor. She worked multiple jobs, maintained a full course load, launched a nationally recognized startup, and did it all without a single penny from her family. The crowd stirred. Heads turned. People began to whisper. My parents froze. She is the first in her family to graduate with honors from our business and design departments simultaneously. Gasps. She is the winner of the National Youth Entrepreneurship Award. My mother's hands lowered from her face. My father's jaw tensed visibly. She is the student who, against every imaginable obstacle, rose. The president smiled, eyes scanning the audience. And she is your valedictorian. The crowd erupted. Cheers, thunderous clapping, even a few whoops. I stood frozen behind the curtain, my body trembling. Chloe was in the third row, standing, hands to her mouth. My professors stood too. Lila rose slowly, almost reverently. And my parents? Pale, motionless, exposed. The president gestured toward me. "Please welcome Amelia Dawson." I stepped into the sunlight. The applause grew louder. Phones came out. People whistled. As I walked to the podium, I passed my family's row. My mother's face was blank, almost as if her makeup couldn't decide whether to stay in place or melt under the heat of shame. My father stared straight ahead, his mouth slightly open. "And Layla?" Lila's eyes were glassy. When I reached the mic, I unfolded my speech. My hands didn't shake. "Good morning," I began. "My name is Amelia Dawson, and when I arrived here, I didn't come with a moving van or a new laptop or a parent helping me check in. I came with a suitcase, 2 jobs already lined up, and enough student debt to crush a small village." Laughter, honest, supportive. I was told growing up that I needed to be more like my sister, more polished, more obedient, more predictable. I paused. Eyes flicked toward my family. But I wasn't predictable. I was stubborn. I was hungry, not just literally, but for something more. For a life that wasn't decided for me. For a future I could build with my own hands. The crowd had quieted into a deep, focused stillness. I used to sit in class and wonder if I belonged, if maybe my parents were right to invest in someone else. But then I realized, what I lacked in support, I made up for in will. And today, standing here as your valedictorian, I know I didn't just belong here. I looked straight ahead, right at my parents. "I earned this." The applause was immediate, and this time, it didn't stop. People rose to their feet, professors, classmates, Chloe crying into her sleeve. Even the security guard near the back clapped. But my parents didn't stand. They just sat. Small. Silent. Like the truth had finally reached them. And this time, they couldn't ignore it. I smiled, not out of spite, but because I didn't need them to stand. I had a stadium full of people who already were. The reservation had been made weeks in advance, long before my name ever touched a headline. It was supposed to be a small dinner, just family, a quiet celebration, as my aunt called it. I went mostly because Grandma Eliza would be there, and because Lila asked me to. "It won't be like before," she promised. "They know now. Everyone does." I didn't dress up. I didn't bring my award. I didn't need to. The weight of what I had accomplished was already stitched into my spine. I walked into that upscale Italian place as myself, no longer the overlooked daughter, the ghost in the corner. They were all already seated when I arrived. Uncles, aunts, cousins. Grandma Eliza sat at the far end of the table in her floral shawl, smiling gently when she saw me. Lila stood to greet me, pulled me into a hug. "You were incredible," she whispered. "I was proud to be your sister today." I didn't expect that. My parents sat in the middle of the table, my mother in her pearls, lips tight, my father beside her, shoulders squared. They looked like they were still trying to convince themselves this was just another dinner, just another moment they could control. But they couldn't, not anymore. The waiter took drink orders, menus were passed around, and the table buzzed with conversation about the ceremony. Then came my Uncle Graham, bold and brash as always. "Well, I'll say it. Amelia, you blew us all away." His wife nodded. "Truly, it was the most powerful speech I've ever heard. And to find out you did all of that on your own? My God, sweetheart." My father cleared his throat. "We always knew she was independent." "No, you didn't," Grandma Eliza said, voice calm but cold. "You dismissed her, you funded Lila, and left Amelia to fend for herself." The table fell silent. My mother flinched. "We did what we thought was best. Amelia was always different." "Different?" Eliza's eyes narrowed. "She was resourceful. She was tenacious. And you punished her for it." Lila set her glass down. "They're right." My parents turned. "I was treated like the favorite," Lila said, "and I let it happen. But watching Amelia build everything from nothing, I realized I wouldn't have survived what she did. You didn't just ignore her. You denied her." There it was. Truth. Out loud. On the table, in public, with no way to take it back. My father shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't mean—" "But you did," I said quietly. "You meant to choose her. You meant to invest in her. You meant to leave me to figure it out alone." They looked at me, startled that I'd spoken. "And I did figure it out. Without your money, without your calls, without your belief. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done needing anything from you." My mother looked stricken. "We were thinking, if you need help now with the business, or housing." "No," I said. "You don't get to offer help now like it erases what you didn't do then. I don't need saving. I built my own foundation. And it's stronger than anything you tried to withhold." The silence was thick, but not hostile. It was final. Grandma Eliza reached across the table and took my hand. "You've always had the fire," she said. "Now the world knows it too." The rest of dinner passed with lighter talk, but the tone had shifted. The hierarchy had collapsed. For once, I wasn't seated on the edge of the family table, fighting to be seen. I was the center, not by force, but by truth. As we stood to leave, my parents didn't hug me. They looked at me like strangers trying to remember who I was. And maybe that was fitting, because the girl they used to know, the quiet one, the obedient one, the one who tried and failed to be enough, she didn't exist anymore. I walked out into the night air with Lila beside me and Eliza's warmth still in my palm. I didn't need their approval. I had something better. I had me. The Monday after graduation, I stepped into the lobby of Novapulse's New York office in a blazer that cost more than any entire outfit I'd ever owned growing up. The air smelled like ambition and citrus cleaner, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was trespassing in someone else's world. I belonged. They hired me on the spot at the National Entrepreneurship Conference, not just because I had a growing business, but because I knew how to build one from rock bottom. They weren't interested in theory. They wanted grit. They wanted real-world scars that turned into strategy. And that's exactly what I brought. By day, I became Novapulse's youngest creative strategy associate. I sat in meetings with C-suite executives, led branding sprints, and pitched campaigns that had once existed only in the back of my sketchbook. I found myself speaking in boardrooms, and they listened. By night and weekend, I poured myself into Inklight Studio. What began as a duct-taped website and late-night cold emails had grown into a full-service agency. I brought on 2 interns, then a project manager. We built our own visual identity, refined our services, and started taking on bigger clients, nonprofits, ethical startups, indie authors. I was finally building the thing I had dreamed of, not just a career, but a voice, a space. And I didn't stop there. With the first bonus from Novapulse, I didn't buy a new phone. I didn't take a vacation. I built a scholarship. It was called the Eliza Grant for Emerging Creators. Named, of course, for the woman who sat across from me at a rickety kitchen table when I was 10 and told me that my sketch of a dragon girl was something real. It was small at first. Just one student. A few $1,000s. But it was enough. Enough to buy books, meals, maybe that one bus ticket that changes the trajectory of a life. Because I knew how life-changing just enough could be, the fund grew fast. My story, quietly, somehow, had gone viral on a few platforms. Students started reaching out. Some sent portfolios. Others sent notes that made me weep. "You made me feel like there's a place for people like me," one girl wrote. "Not just survivors, but creators." I didn't know how to process that, so I just kept building. Life wasn't glossy. It wasn't always graceful. I still burned dinner sometimes, still cried when the weight snuck back in. But now I had people. A real family. Not just by blood, but by choice. Eliza moved in with me eventually, into the sunny upstairs room of my brownstone. We painted it together. She chose a soft seafoam green and called it the color of peace. Chloe and her partner lived 3 blocks away. We met weekly for dinner and usually stayed talking late into the night. We talked about everything: healing, growing pains, our futures. She called me CEO girl and always brought dessert. And Lila? Lila became someone I didn't just forgive, I respected. She got into a graduate program focused on trauma psychology. She started therapy. She volunteered with teen girls from fractured homes. And sometimes she called me just to say, "I had a breakthrough today. Want to hear about it?" We laughed now. We cried sometimes too. But we no longer carried the script our parents handed us. We wrote our own. As for my parents, they reached out here and there. My father sent cards on holidays. My mother called once during a storm and asked if I was safe. I could tell they were trying, not perfectly, not quickly, but awkwardly, desperately. They were ashamed, yes. But more than that, they were outsiders now, looking in. At the girl they dismissed, at the woman who outgrew their story for her. I didn't return every call. I didn't invite them in fully. But I forgave them, quietly, privately. Not because they earned it, but because I deserved to be free. Free from needing them to say the right thing. Free from twisting myself into something palatable. Free from performing. My story had never really been about them. It was about becoming someone in spite of them, and then choosing to be someone better. I learned that strength isn't about vengeance. It's about standing in your truth so firmly you don't need applause. So wholly that even the silence feels full. And when I walk into a room now, it's not to prove anything. It's to build, to teach, to offer my hand to the next girl sitting in the dark, with nothing but grit and a dream and a quiet fire inside her. Because I was that girl once. And now, I am the fire. And I choose to burn bright.